Back off. That's my wife. Hey! You want a roughhouse? Get down on the field. Lady, the princess
You
is
want
here.
to come in here to have a fight?
Please, lady.
She nearly knocked me down.
Where?
She went in there. Hey, you can't go in there.
Lady, I spent half my life in toilets. Probably dying one.
Lady in a print dress. Come on out with your hands up.
Come on in and get me, asshole. And I ain't no lady.
Bubble bath.
Look, there's only one door. Sooner or later, you gotta come through it. Make it now.
What's the matter, honey? You afraid the ladies' room?
All right, freebie. Be a good boy and drop the gun in there. In the basket. Go on, because I'm not even going to count to 10. You up.
Hello again. Essay here. Anyone who's familiar with Nancy Mace knows that the woman, she has a mind of her own, and she doesn't mince words, and she doesn't give a toss about people's feelings. Not at all. Well, if you've been paying attention to current events, you probably heard that she recently trying to push through a bill through Congress. And I have to admit, this is not the first time this bill has appeared anywhere. But anyway, this bill is supposed to be restricting people using bathrooms to your gender. Now, of course, some people say, "Oh my God, gender." That sounds like a minefield and a half. Oh yeah. In modern America, absolutely, no joke. But regardless of that, this is not the first time people had discussions about this issue. I remember back when Obama was president, they had discussions about it. I think it was somewhere, I can't remember, I think it was in the Carolinas, even though Nancy Mace is from the Carolinas, but I'm not going to get into that, where they were arguing about allowing guys into girls' bathrooms. Now, of course, in some cases, when you have an emergency, and if like you're in a sports, in some kind of sports venue, and only available bathroom is the girls' bathroom, well, hey, it is what it is. Indeed, anyone who remembers My Favorite Year probably understands that. Because there's the film. It came out back in the early '80s. It was about Errol Flynn, and good film. You look it up sometime. But anyway, there's a great scene in the film where Peter O'Toole, who was playing Errol Flynn, he goes into a woman's bathroom at the CBS studios in New York because he was supposed to be there to basically do an interview. And all the women are screaming and saying, "What are we doing in here?" And then, of course, one of the women confronts him and say, "You're not supposed to be in here. This is the ladies' room." And then he immediately zips down his pants and he said, "This is for ladies too, but sometimes run a little water through it." I mean, no, that basically was a joke, and I remember I just laughed out loud. It was funny. But the thing is, beyond that circumstance, there's been a lot of scuttlebutt going on about dudes in women's restrooms. And of course, what's going on right now with Nancy Mace, well, let's just say old Mark Dice, he has the receipts on the hard details of this thing. Okay, ready? Here we go.
Things are getting very interesting on Capitol Hill, and it's still going to be 2 months until Donald Trump reassumes leadership when things are really going to go wild. But this week, Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace from South Carolina introduced a resolution that would ban people from using bathrooms in the Capitol that don't correspond with their biological birth. And the left and the media are freaking out about this because there was just a transgender congresswoman elected in Delaware, the first ever, and they're going to get sworn in early January. And so then that would, complicate situations for that person. This person, whose birth name you're not allowed to mention on the big tech platforms because that's considered to be dead naming. That's hateful, even when it's a member of Congress. You're not allowed to talk about history, who now goes by Sarah McBride.
Hey everyone, I seemed to blow up the radical left last night. I filed a resolution that would ban biological men from women's private spaces on the Hill. I'm just getting started. And I've already nowhere near stopping, and the death threats that I'm receiving now aren't going to stop me either. So I've said it before and I'll say it again. Come at me, bro. Or bros in this case. I'm not going to take your threats for an answer. I'm going to fight like hell for women and girls to keep men out of women's private spaces, to include bathrooms, restrooms, locker rooms, changing rooms, you name it. You are not welcome.
Wow. The Overton window has definitely moved. You would never hear anything close to this kind of rhetoric coming from any Republican in office. Very few even mainstream conservative talk show hosts would even sound like this up until just a few years ago. Here's Congresswoman Mace adding a little addition to the signage outside of the bathrooms there in D.C. And in response to this, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson made what he thought was a very bold and brave statement, only to then start wavering at the end. And I would give it about a 98%, 99% chance that he will cave on this.
Hello, everybody. I just want to make a statement for all of you here and be very clear. I was asked a question this morning at the leadership gaggle, and I rejected the premise because the answer is so obvious. For anybody who doesn't know my well-established record on this issue, let me be unequivocally clear. A man is a man, and a woman is a woman, and a man cannot become a woman. That said, I also believe, that's what Scripture teaches, what I just said, but I also believe that we treat everybody with dignity. And so we can do and believe all those things at the same time. And I wanted to make that clear for everybody because there's lots of questions. But that's where I stand. I've stood there my whole life, and those are facts.
The facts are, sir, that you're going to cave on this, and you're going to most likely cave on allowing transgender women to compete against real women, actual women, biological women in high school and college sports, and the whole rest of it. The transgender bathroom issue is a Pandora's box that was opened years ago that the Republicans in Congress don't want to deal with and keep kicking the can down the road because they know that when it comes down to a vote, when it comes down to actually making a decision and going on the record and putting a law into place, they're going to cave. They're going to side with the left. In fact, the Supreme Court has declined to hear several such cases because they don't even want to rule on it. Of course, if it was a liberal majority in the Supreme Court, they would rule on it. They would make it law so that you have to accept wherever these people want to go. But even the Republican majority Supreme Court repeatedly denies even addressing these kinds of cases. But if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gets approved by the Senate to be the head of the Department of Health and Human Services, which I don't know if that's going to actually happen. Donald Trump nominated him to be the head of that position. It'd be fantastic if he is. If he gets approved, then maybe, finally, people will start to talk about things like atrazine and BPA, bisphenol A, endocrine disruptors, and some of the likely chemical causes of all of these, how shall we say, interesting, strange phenomena that we are seeing in our society. When he was running for president over the last year or two, he mentioned it on various podcasts, but it's still not something that you ever hear talked about by any conservative Inc. radio talk show host. Here he is talking to Jordan Peterson, who's seen as a brilliant genius about it, and it just went right over his head.
I think a lot of the problems we see in kids, and particularly boys, it's probably underappreciated that how much of that is coming from chemical exposures, including a lot of the sexual dysphoria that we're seeing. That these kids are being overwhelmed by a tsunami. I mean, they're swimming through a soup of toxic chemicals today, and many of those are endocrine disruptors. There's atrazine throughout our water supply. Atrazine, by the way.
Oh, we know this is old news to us, but still hasn't sunk into any of the hosts over at the Daily Wire or anybody over on Fox News or Newsmax or really any members of Congress, Republicans at all. Here he is on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about the same thing, trying to alert the American people and the world about what it is that's going on.
Probably the most disturbing endocrine disruptor, and this is something we should all be looking at, is atrazine.
Yeah.
Because atrazine...
Okay, we know Alex Jones warned us about this like 15 or 20 years ago. Scientists even know the specific region of the brain that affects gender identity and sexual orientation. It is the INAH3 region of the brain, the third interstitial nucleus of the anterior hypothalamus, which they've found in rats and experiments in other animals. They can actually change the gender identity and sexual orientation of the animals by influencing the chemicals that the fetuses are exposed to when they're in the womb. There's an in-depth discussion about this in Dr. Deborah So's book, The End of Gender, which covers all the scientific studies, all the effects, all the literature, which makes you wonder, why isn't anybody at the Daily Wire, particularly Matt Walsh, who I do have a lot of respect for, but he is, America's #1 transphobe, according to the left. Why is it that he never, ever talks about endocrine disruptors, BPA, or atrazine? Never once in his film, What is a Woman? He's never even tweeted about atrazine, not a single time in his entire life. You could do deep dive searches in people's tweets. 0 results for atrazine, Matt. 0 results for BPA. 0 results for endocrine disruptors. Yeah, your film, What is a Woman, was great, Matt, but what if it's not just a social contagion? What if there's more to the story? What if there's an underlying cause that's at work here, like the chemical exposure and the endocrine disruptors and the INAH3 region of the brain? If transgender men are born with the INAH3 region of the brain of a woman, and brain scans show that that region of the brain is different in transgender people and gay people, by the way, because that part of the brain regulates sexual orientation as well, then just simply not using their preferred pronouns and denying how they feel isn't going to stop this. But if you start going down that road, then the left will call you a eugenicist, just like the Nazis. So Conservative Inc. has to play it safe and just claim that it's just a social phenomenon from people watching too many TikTok videos.
Okay, you saw Mark Dice's video, right? And I have to admit, Mark Dice, he's no Alex Jones. But I have to admit, and he's no scientist either. I'd be first to tell you, no, he's no biogeneticist or anything like that. But hey, the guy did his homework because I remember back in the 90s when they first mapped the human genome. I remember there was a few discussions about what Mark Dice mentioned in his video about the INAH3 section of the human brain that controls sexuality. Yeah, I remember people were talking about the so-called gay gene. And I remember at the time, after they had mapped the human genome, people were, remember, this was like long before, social media. I remember that read articles and I can't remember if it was a Time or Newsweek magazine and in the regular newspaper. And there was in the opinion section, they were discussing it. And they said that because the human genome had been mapped, there's a distinct possibility that they could, find people who are susceptible to certain genetic diseases. And indeed, to this day, they still talk about that. And the funny thing is, at the time, this was at the end of the 90s, from beginning 2000s, they said that, yes, if any disease has a, genetic, cause, by mapping the human genome, they could actually, seek it out and find the defective gene and repair it. And in fact, they called it gene therapy, which has since become a thing. But, oh my God, when people start talking about the so-called gay gene, wow. I mean, like someone just set off a thermonuclear device right in the middle of somebody's shorts. I mean, they had a whole bunch of people, mostly the gay crowd or their so-called allies, just having a total super hissy fit, saying, "Oh, don't talk about gay genes. There's no gay genes." I mean, they were just totally adamant, and gays are just fine, just where they are. Don't even try to fix them. And you gotta remember, this was back during the period when they had so-called reversion therapy, primarily held mostly on by religious institutions. And I remember those institutions where they felt that homosexuality was basically nurture, not nature. And therefore, these people back in the 90s, and some places as far back as the 80s, thought that, if these people were brought up to be gay, maybe they can be reverted back to normal. And I'm thinking, okay. But then after the human genome mapping, then some people said, well, maybe it's not just nurturing. Maybe it is nature. And if we can, we scientists can find out, what the gay gene is, maybe we can repair it and people won't be gay no more. But wow, there was so many people just screaming on the mountaintops about "Don't you dare!" And indeed, there was one guy, was it Simon Levin, I think his name was? Yeah, he wrote a book back during this same time period. It was called The Sexual Brain. Now, of course, in Mark Dice's video, he mentioned a different book, but I vaguely remember this book. In fact, it came out around the same time as The Belt Curve, which was basically saying that brown people were basically dumb. No, because I remember the book, and it said that the intellect of brown people was a belt curve. They start at a certain point, they reach a certain point, and they go in the toilet. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, fuck you too. But yeah, they had a lot of books like that in the 90s. And of course, that Levine guy, when he wrote his book about how homosexuality may have a biological component. This was before the human genome was mapped. So the guy was obviously sniffing in the right direction. And of course, since that time, anyone who's been familiar with microplastics and other types of biological contamination. I mean, good grief, when I was growing up, Lake Erie was one of the most polluted bodies of water in America. I mean, no joke. I mean, you wouldn't want to drink that brown water. No. Ugh, gross. But yeah. And I remember at the time, people spoke about how, and believe me, before you start screaming at the rooftops, even Alex Jones, decades ago, talked about this. You know, in one of his videos where he said that certain chemicals was making frogs in certain bodies of water gay. And I'm thinking, yeah. And of course, some people scream, oh, but Alex Jones, he's a crazy man. I'm thinking, yeah. But even a broken clock is right 2 times a day. I mean, yeah, Alex Jones, he flaps his lips about a lot of stuff. And don't get me started with the Sandy Hook stuff, okay? But doesn't mean he's wrong all the time. I mean, even Tim Pool said that, yeah, he has like a jar off in the corner that says the Alex Jones was right jar. And when something that Alex Jones mentioned years ago turns out to be right after all, say, okay, I put some money in the Alex Jones jar. And I'm thinking, yeah. I mean, the guy's kind of wild. He's a bit of a wild man, but yeah, it doesn't mean he's wrong all the time. But still. What's going on right now in Congress with the Nancy Mace, and I think that one fellow that you saw in Mark Dice's video, well, that's just part of a larger cultural issue. Because if you remember in the video, this also had to do about men and women's sports. And indeed, if you remember, when they had that woman, being going through the process of becoming a Supreme Court justice, what did happen? I saw that video. They asked her directly to her nose, what is a woman? And she couldn't answer the question. And it's not because she's a dum-dum. It's just that, culturally speaking, she didn't want the crazy, activists, the trans activists, gay activists, whatever, scream at her on Twitter. And I'm thinking, excuse me, Twitter is not real life, okay? And anyone who knows anything about Twitter knows that it doesn't take much to get a posse going on Twitter. And all you have to do is contact some people outside the United States, like probably Indonesia or perhaps maybe Moldova, and give them some money, and they can crank out 1,000, 100,000 bots for you, and give them all Twitter accounts, and therefore when you make a statement, all those bots will then retweet your statement and throw it at whoever, and they feel like, and the person on Twitter feel like there's a whole mob coming after him, when in fact it's only just one person and 100,000 bots. So there you go. So yeah. And indeed, for a long time, the radicals, the activists, that's how they basically got away with stuff. I mean, it was almost like that famous story about Jesus meeting the possessed man on the road to Canaan. And if anyone who remembers their Bible, I might explain the story, but I remember hearing it back when I was in Bible class, which was back long ago. And they said that, yeah, and Jesus asked the man, what's your name? And he said, my name is Legion, for we are many. Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, when it comes to these activists, yeah, they are legion, for they are many. And wait for it, sometimes they actually show up in person, no bots. But these people can be so unbelievably hysterical about asking hard questions about what is the cause of this of these people's behavior. Is it nurturing, i.e. people watching too many TikTok videos, which I'm not going to get into? Or is there actually something wrong with their brain, that their brain doesn't work? And I'm thinking it might be a little bit of both. Because back when I was a kid growing up, I remember watching a documentary about psychology, and it was this British documentary. It was a pretty good documentary too. And they talked about people and hypnosis. because they said that when it comes to certain psychological issues, sometimes you can like treat people with hypnosis. But I didn't remember in the documentary they said that certain people are susceptible to hypnosis, but other people aren't. And then they explained why. They said that certain people have certain, certain aspects of their personality makeup where they are easily suggestible, or what's the cliche, malleable. And therefore, under the right circumstances, if you're a really good hypnotist, you can actually hypnotize people. But on the other side of the coin, if you're not very malleable and you're not very susceptible, then hypnosis ain't going to work on you. Yeah, the guy can sit there and swing the little medallion in front of you for now till doomsday, and you ain't gonna be hypnotized. Okay, it's just the way it works. And therefore, when you look at homosexuality and the trans issue, it could be a combination of both. It could be that you're dealing with people who are genetically susceptible, and therefore their personalities are malleable. And then when you combine it with the cultural issues and cultural reinforcement, i.e., social media, it can result in people basically going off the reservation in more ways than imaginable. Now, of course, as far as Nancy Mace is concerned, I don't know if her bill's going to get through Congress. I mean, because right now, while the Republicans technically do control the majority, I mean, if you saw in Mark Dice's video, man, a lot of those damn guys with R's next to their name, man, talk about having to wake up every morning and check their boxers to see if they got a pair. Yeah, talk about dickless wonders. And as for the Senate, yeah, good luck with that. But then again, of course, I think was in January, they're going to have a new Congress, and technically the Republicans technically are controlling the Senate, will be controlling the Senate. But still, like I said, and of course you saw in Mark Dice's video, there's a lot of Republicans who are, let's just say, basically not reliable. I mean, you have like the Mitt Romney crowd. Yeah, the country club crowd. People who just want their perks. They want their tea time at the Riviera Country Club. Or they want their lobbyist money. And they don't want to make no waves. And then you have people like old Lindsey Graham. Yeah. Always Robin, but never Batman. Yep. Lindsey, let's just say he's a good soldier. He's a good follower. He is no leader. Doesn't matter if he's dealing with old Trump or even old John McCain back in the past. Yeah, Lindsey, he'll do what he's told. Doesn't matter who's telling him. But thing is, not everyone in Congress is like old Lindsey. No, a follower, not a leader. And not everyone is like Mittens Romney. Therefore, despite Nancy Mace's fervency on this issue, let's just say this: her getting that bill through Congress, the current Congress, or even the future Congress next year, that's going to be a very big hurdle. And no, she ain't going to get no help from the Democrats. And then you say, what about that big boy from Pennsylvania who's currently a senator? Mr. Hoodies Incorporated. Can't think. Yeah, Fetterman. Fetterman, I wouldn't rely on him to deliver a pizza. Even though I have to admit, most days a week he's definitely dressed up looking like a damn pizza delivery boy. But regardless of that, because some days of the week, you have him, like, say, on the damn TV news. He's actually rather thoughtful and actually rather skeptical when it comes to radical leftist issues. But then because he's still inside the Democratic Party, he Fetterman could only go just so far. And thus, I don't see him going a full Tulsi Gabbard, okay? Nah, I don't see that happening. Unless, of course, something happens down the road and the DNC try to put Fetterman's balls in a vice and basically makes him choose either stay with the party or leave. But I don't know if such a circumstance might occur to Fetterman. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe this issue with the men in the girls' bathroom might push him across the line. I don't know. But yeah, considering that even though there's a lot of Trump people inside Congress now, you still have a lot of the leftover Republicans from the bad old Bush and Bush days. So yeah, I don't want to take that bet that this thing actually will get through Congress, especially after January when they have a new Congress. Now, I don't think I want to bet no money on that. But guess what? The situation ain't going away. Indeed, that's one of the reasons why Trump won the election. Yeah, a lot of people didn't like the idea of these dudes, and let's not pretend we ain't talking about Caitlyn Jenner, i.e., formerly Bruce. No, we're talking about dudes going into the women's bathroom, dudes showing up at the volleyball game saying I'm a chick now, and then totally making a mess of the actual girls in the volleyball court. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. Now, of course, if someone actually did get a sex change, okay, then I got no problem with them using the bathroom. But that's not what's happening in many of these cases. You're having these guys showing up, declaring they're a woman now, no breast implants, definitely no surgery down there, and demanding to go into the girls' bathroom or go to the girls' locker room. Remember the clown that won all those swim meets? What was that? I think it was at Pennsylvania University. Yeah. You think that guy had a sex change? No. And wait for it. You ready? It came out afterwards. He had a girlfriend. And you say, what? Yeah. I remember saying that. And I'm thinking, man, I smell a rat. I said, this guy's not gay. This guy's faking it. And you say, but gay and trans not the same thing. Yeah, I know. But still, you figure if someone is supposedly trans, they wouldn't have a girlfriend. They wouldn't be interested in girls at all, if you know what I mean. And then again, of course, Tim, he more than once said that's a problem with these activists and these radicals, is that they like to change the meaning of words. Remember Latin X? Remember that? Yeah, that went up like a lead balloon. And what about Win Nixon? You say, Win Nixon, what's that? Oh, that was their new fancy word for women. Supposedly it combined what they call women with ovaries with women with not ovaries and women with cocks. Put them all together, and they called them all Win Nixon. Well, that also went up like a lead balloon. So they don't use that term no more. But still, how this thing's going to turn out, I don't rightly know. Well, that's all I got to say about Nancy Mace and her taking on the trans crowd and these guys running around pretending to be women. And yeah, that's right. A lot of them, let's not mince words, okay? If you see some big, Bluto-looking guy going into a woman's bathroom, don't assume that they are trans, okay? Assume that there's some weirdo looking to do something freaky with the women in the bathroom, okay? Yeah, precisely. Yeah. Well, that's all I gotta say on this mess. And if you reach this end of the video, well, thanks a lot for watching. And if you're not subscribed, well, go ahead and subscribe. And leave a comment if you want. Or don't leave a comment. Doesn't matter to me. Okay? Well, that's all I gotta say on that mess, and that's my opinion.
There's two eyes for every one of us, but somebody got them first and took them on. It's so American. Man, oh man, yeah, you're so American.